I'm going to tell you why your kiddo doesn't need to memorize more vocabulary. I'm here at a hotel writing book 6 of a chapter book series. Why I created this whole series and why I'm documenting this right now is because raised monolingual, right? Raised monolingual, failed Spanish, and taught myself 3 different languages. And I was like, okay, why aren't more kiddos becoming fluent? Well, here are my tips. Here are my tips, and this is how we get kiddos fluent. Is we ditch the textbooks. Completely ditch the textbooks. When you think of a textbook, maybe 3 reasons why textbooks are not the way to go if you want your kid to become fluent. So 3 reasons why memorization textbooks won't do it, and then the solution. And the solution is what I've created here in this hotel. So I'm a teacher and author, and so I go to these, I do like a writer's weekend. We'll get to that in a second. But the 3 reasons why textbook and memorization is not going to help your kid become fluent in another language. So just think about when you learned a language and you had the textbooks in class, right? You opened up the textbook, list of probably 30, 40 different vocabulary words. You had to fill in the blanks. It felt like a job. Or how about this other one that language teachers used to do? You'd have like 30 vocab words, right? Let's just say Spanish, for example. Spanish on one side, English on the other, and you had to do Spanish, English, Spanish, English, Spanish, English. Do you remember that? So you have to do that over and over. So that rote memorization, first of all, is brutal. So your kiddo's not going to want to become fluent. Language class now is like the worst class. I used to be a teacher in a public school. I left the public school 6 years ago and started the school language mindset. So why textbooks are not effective? Why memorization is not effective? And then you're going to think like this sounds counterintuitive, like you have to memorize it, but it's counterintuitive when you think about how we acquire a language. Okay, so you got like, in the States, we start at 14, usually a language. So you got 14-year-olds learning Spanish with a list of random vocabulary words broken up, isolated. This week, we're going to learn family. Next week, we're going to learn transportation. And so they have like the Spanish words on one side, English on the other, and you're just doing the rote memorization. Okay, you there? So that doesn't work. That's, first of all, it's boring. When you have so the first issue is when you have isolated words, when you learn a language in isolated words, that does not produce speaking. Everything that we do when we want to learn language, you always have to think, how does this translate into having a conversation, right? So instead of, for example, let's use a real example here. Rather than just learning the word brother, make that into a conversation, a word that's into a conversation. Take an isolated word and put it into a conversation. So instead of just learning brother, hermano, brother, hermano, brother. What if you were to say, my brother lives in Boston, whatever. So now you're having a conversation with people. When you're talking about your family, you're able to say, my brother, now you have the verb lives and you have a place. Now you're having a conversation and now the person is now like, oh, okay, you're conversing, you're communicating. If you just say brother, you're not communicating. First mistake, right? Learning vocabulary in isolation. Number 2, I think this is this one, this one is the killer. Depending on what language you're studying, this topic can be more brutal than others. Verbs. I remember do you remember the 501 Spanish verbs or 501 French verbs? It's like a Bible of verbs. It's literally a manual. It's a manual. So if you think about it, if you're learning a language like a manual, you're going to speak like a manual. You're not going to speak like a human. So let's just use Spanish, for example, here. So this is the piece. So you look at Spanish, you look at 501 Spanish verbs. They have one verb, like for example, to eat, right? They have that. Then they have all the 6 different forms to eat. I eat, you eat, he eats, she eats, we eat, y'all eat, y'all in Spain, y'all in Latin America, they eat, right? So you have those 6 forms. And then that, when we focus too much on grammar, on the verb conjugations, so you have that, and then you're like, okay, well, what verb tense do we want to use? present tense, present continuous, past tense, simple past, past progressive. Like, whoa. Do you see how complicated we've already gotten? Now, this is what we're doing with kids in high school. I had to teach this. I had to teach all of those rules, all of that memorization. I remember, I think it's in 10th grade, Spanish 3. Once they get that, once they get that certification or that credit, huge drop. I'm talking huge exodus drop right after that, because we bombard the kids with so much grammar. It literally is like 9th grade. 9th grade's kind of still fun. The kids still have a chance. And then go to 10th grade, it's like, poof, here's all the grammar all at once. Okay, so let's recap. Number 1, vocabulary in isolation. It's not going to work. Ineffective. Overloading with Spanish or with vocabulary, that's ineffective. So the third one, which I will say, is waiting to speak. So we spend a lot of time waiting to speak. So this is the part that is really frustrating. We feel like we need to have the perfect structure in order to speak. We don't know enough words for us to be able to speak. This is where we flip it on the head here, okay? So this is how we're going to shift this. Now, ready for what you should do? Okay. So what you should do and what we do, how we get kiddos speaking, we're talking kiddos like 7-year-olds, 6-year-olds, 14-year-olds, those kids are using the language right now. They're doing so much better than the kids I used to teach in high school. It's insane. It's insane. So I had to leave the school system. I had to start my own thing. This is why I'm here. So we flip it on its head. So what we do now is, I know, because I've been doing languages for so long, over 20 years, crazy. Over 20 years I've been studying languages and teaching myself. And this is before, honestly, before the internet had so many options. It was you go to the library and that was it. And you have the grammar books and all that. So now it's so much easier. So what we do now is, I've had so many conversations in different languages. I can predict the first 10 exchanges of a conversation. So I know what to anticipate. So this is where we kind of hack the system a bit. This is why we get them speaking immediately. So what are the first conversations that we usually have? Everyone talks about the weather. Get your weather down. Always be able to have your salutations. Hi, how are you? Have at least 3 or 4 different emotions. Be able to ask the question back. Immediately, you're in it. I can't tell you how good it feels when this just happened to me the other day in Russian. I know 8 words in Russian, but I'm speaking. So I saw one of my friends and I hadn't seen him for 6 months. And I went over to him and I said in Russian, how are you? I was like, как дела? Right, it's not great, but whatever. Как дела? And then he goes back and he's like, хорошо. And I was like, yeah. Yes. I asked him the question. He responded. It felt so good. And then he said goodbye in a different way that I didn't remember, but I was like, okay, baka, and I guess that's another way. So I learned that from one of my friends that I horseback ride with, a Russian friend. So you see why we rip the Band-Aid off with speaking immediately. So we get the kiddos knowing the weather, the emotions, their basic thing about them. I'm learning this language because it's beautiful, blah, blah, blah. Basic things. You set them up for the first couple of interactions. Think of it like tennis, back and forth, or chess. You know what the next moves are. So that's why we get our kiddos speaking immediately. Now, the next piece is what do you do about all the vocabulary and grammar? This is why I write these books. So what I do is I take my teacher brain, I took my 20 years of learning languages and practical experience, being an interpreter, teaching, and just having real conversation, traveling. So what I did is I condensed all the verbs that you need to usually know. This is an interesting thing. You actually kind of need I don't know, maybe a couple thousand or even a couple hundred. If you maximize a couple hundred words in a language, you're able to really stretch that. So it's not so much about quantity, it's more about quality. So it's can you maximize these 300 words to be able to have a conversation well? And this is it. So after you've been learning languages for over 20 years, you can anticipate, where the conversation is going to go. And also, when you're the speaker, you can actually manipulate the conversation so that you move it in a way to things that you know how to talk about. So anyways, that's another piece. But the idea is we got rid of the textbooks. We don't do the grammar. We do a gentle, noticing of grammar after we immerse them in stories. So I created this whole book series, a whole progression. Let's get in with with a comic, which is my way of doing the basic dialogues. We start with a comic. We start with a short story. This is the Salt, Pepper, and Sunny series that we create for our students. So we start with the comics, starting with the short stories, the short and sweet. And then we have a podcast that goes with those short stories, so you can do a conversation. Then we move them into the chapter books. So this is where I take my weekends and I go away. I'm in New Jersey right now. And there's a big storm coming, so I got to go soon. But I wanted to record this. So we have the chapter books, the short stories. We have the comics, short stories, and then the chapter books. The chapter books is where the fluency happens, okay? I just wrote out the whole outline for book 6. We got kids on book 3 right now. I got to stay ahead of the game because they're moving, right? So I write the books in English, and I have a whole team that does them that translates them, right? Because we have 9 different languages as of right now. English, Spanish, French, Italian, German, Chinese, Japanese, Korean, Farsi. And we're going to add Tagalog. We're going to add Tagalog in May. So the idea is we want your kiddos speaking, we want them to feel confident. So we have them go into our chapter books. The chapter books, why are they a series? When kids get attached to a character, it's easier. There's less unknown, so they have an anchor. They know Salt, Pepper, and Sunny. They know Salt the cat, Pepper the dog, and Sunny the squirrel. So the progression from the books is like a slow progression, right? In the first book, there's a lot of pictures, a lot of repetitious words, just present tense, not a lot of unique words. It's very, okay, so when I had to write this, I had to make sure, can an 8-year-old that knows 0 Chinese understand this right away? Yes. Because there's audio too in our books. English audio too. It's amazing. And they use the books, they use the images, everything so it's progressive. So that's book 1, the word thief. Book 2, same 3 characters. Now I get a little more, maybe more words. So this was 2,500 words. Now book 2, I think it was about 3,100 words. So now we're still present tense, but more unique words. You know, when I say unique words, it's out of the high frequency words. So words that are very specific. There's some very specific things that happen in book 2. Octopus Island, that's very specific for that. And so it's unique vocabulary, but they're going to understand that unique vocabulary because they're reading the story. They're so engaged with the story that they understand the word green laser, right? Because they're seeing what's happening with the green laser. Yeah. Book 3, now we're moving over. So now there's less images in book 2. Now book 3, way less images. Still images, but less. Now we've expanded a little past tense, more expanded vocabulary. Also repeated vocabulary from book 1, 2, 3. Do you see how we're going here? So this is book 3, Sweet Planet. Book 4, Magic Watch. Book 5, I don't have the title for that yet, but it's like a Freaky Friday thing when they switch bodies. I'm not sure. Book 6, now when you get to book 6, which I just wrote, which is the murder mystery, the whodunit, now I've got full access, meaning I can switch between present, past, I can do more vocabulary. This is where the kiddo understands the function, the basic functioning of that language. So they're able to understand, for example, in Japanese, that the verb comes at the end. For Spanish, they're going to understand that the verb and noun have to have agreement. You know what I'm saying? They see that by just reading the stories. This is why people waste a lot of time with language learning. This is why our kiddos are doing it fast and efficiently. And I'm going to continue writing these book series until I die, right? This is book 6. I literally am thinking about book series, the book for your kiddo. I have to stay ahead of the game because we might have a kiddo that might pop into book 3. They might be ready for book 3, right? They might be a little more advanced. They go right into book 3, which we have that for one of our Farsi students. So we're translating the Farsi book 3 right now because they're at that level. Oh, and here's another thing I want to mention before I go. So the languages have script. So we we have script for the comics, short stories, and the chapter books, chapter book 1. That's to warm them up by when they finish the first chapter book, so they have script, right? So for example, in Japanese, you have the romaji underneath, or Korean, you have the romanization underneath. Same thing with the pinyin for the Chinese. So they have that they have that crutch for the first book. Because why do we do the crutch? Because I want them speaking immediately. I don't want them struggling with the alphabet. It's not the point. But by the end of book 1, the crutch is gone, which means by book 2, it's all in Japanese. By book 3, 4, and 5, it's all in Japanese. It's all in Farsi. Same thing with Farsi. So like for book 3, right, that we're going forward for this one student, it's all in Farsi. But her sisters are going to be doing book 1, so they have Farsi and Finglish. You get what I mean? This is how we get kiddos fluent fast, without memorization. I am raising or building kids speaking multiple languages fluently and fast, and having that be their new identity. All right, I better take off before this big storm comes. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.